Good afternoon, everyone. It is 12:30. Welcome to another one of our webinar series, Property Ownership from Financing to Maintaining, turning those to-dos into can-dos. We have a special guest today from Freedom Home Advantage. We've done quite a few webinars this year, given the pandemic, and want to continue to do these webinars. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from our clients and friends in the community, and we love being able to offer these free webinars to everyone. We know that complex issues can be hard to navigate, and we're here to not only educate you, but offer ways for you to hear not only from us financial advisors, but from other professionals that we work with and that we have partnerships with. So, well, let's take care of a few housekeeping items on how you can interact with us today. We are going to keep all of the questions for the most part towards the end, but if you do have one during the presentation, please feel free to put it in the chat. If it's right on there and we can see it, we may be able to get to it right away. Otherwise, we will be sure to answer those questions at the end. If you're on your device, your phone, you can tap the screen to ask a question or to get the handouts. Follow the arrows there. However, if you're on a computer, if you click the reddish orange arrow, that will open up a menu and where you can get your handouts and see where you can type in your questions. So today, along with me from Fort Pitt Capital Group, I have Matt Simpson from Freedom Home Advantage with me. I met Matt here at Fort Pitt a couple years ago. He came into our office to talk to us about the wonderful services that they provide to homeowners and to individuals that have rental properties. It was exciting to hear the services that he offers, and we're happy to have a relationship with Freedom Home Advantage. We've had many things come in, but the strong relationship is key to a trusted partner. So now I'm happy to have Matt Simpson introduce himself. Matt?
Thanks, Beth. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Simpson. I live in North Strabane Township with my wife, Erin, and two daughters, Madison and Emma. Prior to starting Freedom Home Advantage, I was a group manager at a large financial institution downtown. With travel for work, kids' activities, and just life in general, I realized it was tough to keep up with the maintenance and ever-growing home to-do list around my home, my parents' home, or my rentals that I owned. I tried to find time and I couldn't, or I'd hunt and chase contractors to get the work done with no luck. I'm an engineer by trade, and problem solving is what I like to do. So I set out to find a solution. I personally believe in relationships and strong partners, and recognize that many people want the same partnership they get with an excellent financial planner when it came to caring for their home. Someone in their corner that wants to understand them and their goals, and be more than just an advisor, but a true partner in their corner that they can trust to take care of the things for them and help them realize their goals. And that is how Freedom Home Advantage was formed. Currently, my team's responsible for about $50 million of real estate in the South Hills through the two services that we offer, which are represented on this page. So our mission is to give our clients freedom of time to do the things that they love and fully enjoy their home forever. And peace of mind knowing that you have a partner in your corner that has your best interests in mind. We deliver on this through these two services. For your home, you're assigned a home service specialist that gets to know you and your home. Think of like a good cleaning lady that you trust to come into your home, or Joe the lawn care service or something like that. We are your partner for that. We tackle your home to-do list, and we perform the maintenance on your home to keep it safe, comfortable, and cost efficient. When an emergency pops up, we're only a call away to handle it for you. Not only is my team capable of doing a wide array of things, I also build custom homes in the South Hills, and so I have a list of plumbers, roofers, concrete, you name it, that are actually very good, and I would use on my own house and the houses I build. We also do work on rental properties if you have it. The most important thing for rentals, which we're going to hit on and hit some tips on today, is to stay current on the maintenance and actually go and visit them. If you let those go without paying attention to the rental, that investment actually becomes a very costly repair, which over time can really add up. So my goals for you out of this session, okay, I'm going to share my team's experiences and what we look for to keep a home safe, comfortable, and cost efficient, so you can do it yourself. Or if you plan to hire someone, I'm going to train you on what to look for in hiring and finding a good service provider. Like I mentioned, we have to do that for our clients as well, and I think that's very important information to have when you're getting someone to either work on your investment property or your own home. But before we get to that, I'd like to turn it over to Beth, who's going to walk through setting your goals and how to make that dream a reality.
Thanks, Matt. I get a lot of questions about saving for or how to afford a home. We always start in the same place. What is your goal? Having these conversations with our clients is so important. We're looking at whether it's a short-term goal or a long-term goal. When you're purchasing a home, as part of your goals, it's important to put a plan in place. We want to talk about when the goal is going to take place. Is it going to be this year, next year, 3 years, 5 years down the road, or are we saving for the retirement home or a vacation home that's 10 years into the future? Having these conversations really sets the stage for the planning. And how long do you plan to keep that home? What's the time frame? So a few things that you want to consider when you're buying a home prior to buying that home is paying off some debt. The less debt that you have, the more likely you'll be approved for a loan. Ideally, you want your max debt to income ratio to be around 40% or lower. A good rule of thumb is that your entire mortgage payment should be no more than between 28 to 33% of your income. So that's kind of when we're thinking about cash flows, expenses, these are the things that we want to look at. Where's your income? How much is your debt? What does the payment look like for the house that you're purchasing? You also want to build an emergency fund. We talk about this in all of our meetings when we're talking with clients. That emergency fund is so important, and it should be probably about 3 to 6 months of expenses. I know more recently, given the state of the economy right now and this pandemic, I've even told clients 6 to 9 months or a year's worth of expenses, depending on their job security. We never know, given the times right now, if you'll be able to meet some of those expenses. And we all know owning a home, there's always something that pops up. So you always want to have available cash for the roof, the water heater, a pipe, anything like that. So you want to have some expenses put aside, an emergency fund, something you can get to very quickly, liquid cash. The next thing we want to do is determine how much can we afford to spend on the purchase of this home. Again, is it a vacation home? Is it out of state? What are we looking for as far as spending? Once we determine how much that home is going to cost, we want to start saving for the down payment or figure out where we can get that down payment in the closing costs, because there's tons of costs that go into buying a home. And the first thing that we're thinking about is, hey, we should get pre-approved. We need to know our credit score. We want to get pre-approved for a loan, know how much we can borrow. And the best way to do that is to figure out how much we have set aside, where we're going to come up with the cash. And then we want to decide what type of loan. Are we going with a fixed loan for 15, 20, 30 years? Or are we going variable? Given the current interest rates, so many people are locking into a 30-year fixed mortgage because they can get that at 3% or less. And it's like free money out there. And it's very, very exciting times, but it's also a very challenging and frustrating time to be buying a home because of the bidding wars that are going on. If anyone is selling a home, you know exactly what's going on. And if you're buying that home, you might be getting outbid. So having that pre-approval definitely helps when putting in for those bids. So buying a home is actually one of the largest expenses one will have, usually right behind paying taxes. We all know how much we pay in taxes. So once we determine, hey, can we afford it? The next thing is managing and tracking this investment. You know, your home is an investment. It does grow, whether it's a vacation home or it's your personal residence. So not only do you have to start with the process of saving for the home, but now we need to think about the ongoing cost of the home ownership. And many people don't think about the taxes that they're going to pay on top of the principal and interest for the mortgage. And these are costs that are going to continue even when the mortgage is paid off. So you need to take that into consideration when budgeting. The size of the house will also be important. Think about utilities, especially if you were renting and the utilities were included. Sometimes people get a little shock with how much the gas is and the electric when they go from renting to owning a home. The biggest thing is to create that budget. And no one likes the budget word. I bring it up quite often when I'm meeting with clients, but creating a budget goes a long way when figuring out how much you have to spend. Let's face it, you still want to do the fun things. You still want to go on vacations. You still want to do traveling, activities, skiing or golfing, or just eating out, to name a few. And there are quite a few people that end up house rich and cash poor from lack of planning. Think about it, house rich and cash poor individuals are short on cash for the discretionary items, and they tend to have trouble meeting other financial obligations. So don't forget that there's always upkeep with the purchase of a home. And this includes rentals, which have other costs that you need to consider into your budget if you're going to have investment properties. Anyone who has rentals will tell you that they're always doing work on the units. There's always something to upgrade or to keep up with as far as regulations, and there's costs involved in all of that. Not all of us are able to fix up and do everything. I wish I could, but I'm not that handy. So sometimes we need to hire those contractors to help us, and they can get pretty expensive. So including that into the budgeting is very important. We want to know how long we're going to hold that property so that we can budget for the length of that term. And then there's the financing. How will you pay for this new home or this investment property? Will you pay cash? Will you get a loan from the bank? Or will you borrow from your investments? So there are many ways to finance the purchase of your new home or vacation home or investment properties. And so talking to your financial advisor can help you to make that decision. For example, we just had a client who was building a home, but did not want to sell their home until the other one was completed. Who wants to move twice? So instead of going to a bank for a loan, we were able to do something that's called to pledge their investment account. This is a taxable account, and we could use it as collateral to secure funds to help build the home until their home was sold. So it's a way for them to get to cash, liquid cash, at very low interest rates and no closing costs. So they got two things accomplished. They got to stay invested. So as the market was going up, they were able to participate. They have a low interest loan. So also by keeping their money invested, we didn't have to worry about selling any investments to raise the cash, which meant no capital gains tax on the sales of those investments. And this is especially helpful if there's a short-term loan, such as less than 1 year, and you know that you're going to be able to pay that off, kind of like a bridge loan, if you will. So we have lots of clients that have done that as far as short-term or coming up even with that down payment that we talked about. There are other ways of doing it besides doing home equity loans or selling your investments. So you want to talk to your tax professionals and your financial advisors and work with your team to determine what works best for you and what your options are. So let's talk a little bit about taxes, and more specifically, keeping up with tax laws, which it's not easy. They change it constantly. And so using a professional is well worth the cost. When it comes to knowing what's deductible and what isn't, it's important whether you're a homeowner or you have rentals to know what can I deduct. And I know we had a couple of questions about rentals and deductions. And I would have to say that even though we do tax planning, I do not give tax advice. So I would say the best place to ask about what is deductible from a rental standpoint, you will want to talk to your tax professional and get tax advice, because depending on how long you're renting it, if you're part of it is your residence, there may be different roles and percentages of what you can deduct. So talk to your tax professional. I know enough to be dangerous, but that's just one area that I definitely defer to an accountant. We have seen so many changes with taxes over the last few years, including the standard deduction. Many of us remember being able to itemize our mortgage interest. However, with the increase in the standard deduction, that may not be the case for you. I recall back in 2007 when I was building my home, and I remember the woman who was the sales lady at the site telling us, well, it's really not going to cost you as much as you think, because you're going to be able to deduct that interest. And, you know, you take that into consideration when you're thinking about, can I afford this home? Can I afford to buy this? And that was always part of it, because the standard deduction was so low that if you bought this home and your interest rate was high enough, hey, you could deduct the interest and you kind of got that back, if you will. Well, that has changed more recently, and homeowners who bought houses more recently can deduct interest on the first $750,000 of the mortgage, but this does require itemizing. It allows you to reduce your taxable income by the amount of money that you've paid into mortgage interest during that year. But you have to be able to itemize. And since the standard deductions have been raised, it does become a little bit more difficult. So for example, for 2021, anyone who's filing single, the standard deduction is $12,550. So you have to have mortgage interest, any other deductible expenses above that amount to be able to itemize. And for married filing jointly, that amount's even higher. It's the standard deduction is $25,100, and head of household is $18,800. So you can see that it may be difficult for most individuals to itemize due to the increases in the standard deduction a few years ago. But there are other ways that you can reduce your taxes with the extension of the CARES Act for 2021. And although this isn't just for home buyers or owners, I thought it might just be good to mention some of the tax savings that were extended, since I was talking about itemized versus standard. So for one, people who take the standard deduction this year can deduct up to $300 of cash donations to charities. And if you're married and filing jointly, you can deduct up to $600 on your 2021 tax return, which you'll file in 2022. If you remember, or if you did it last year for 2020, married filing joint was $300. They did increase that to $600 for 2021. Now, if you itemize, it may make sense if you do have a lot of mortgage interest and you want to try to get to itemize and get above those standard deductions, you may want to think about bundling if you're charitably inclined. And so for 2021, the limitation for cash contributions to certain charities was raised to 100% against your individual AGI. This does not include donor advised funds. That was a whole separate webinar that we talked about. So if you have questions about that, you want to talk about that, please let me know. I will be happy to discuss that further. But I just thought this is a great place to make sure at the beginning of the year here that people understand that there is this CARES Act extension that went on, and that there are ways for you to be able to still itemize if you're pretty close on that mortgage interest. Many times I've been asked about borrowing from a 401k or an employer plan for purchasing a home or even for the down payment. And I talked a little bit earlier about ways to secure loans, banks, cash, liquid assets, borrowing from your investments. The other place is your 401k. And you can, but it's not usually a good idea because there's a lot of opportunity cost in doing so. The funds that you take from your retirement account cannot be made up easily. Think about it, your employer plan is earmarked for retirement. That's why you get the tax breaks. That's why it goes in tax-free, tax deferred, or in gross tax deferred. Still, it is your money and you do have the right to it. So if you want to use those funds to buy a house or for the down payment, you do have two options. You can borrow from your 401k if your plan allows for it, or you can withdraw the money from your 401k if your employer allows in-service withdrawals. So whether you're borrowing or you're going to take a loan, which is the more desired option versus withdrawing, you will avoid the early withdrawal penalty if you're under 59 and a half, nor do you have to pay any income tax on the amount you borrow. But you do have to pay yourself back. And what I mean by that is you have to put the money back into that 401k or employer plan. And you have to pay yourself interest too. Generally, the max loan term is about 5 years. However, if you take a loan on your 401k to buy a primary principal residence, you may be able to pay it back over a longer period of time. You have to check with your plan participant. Now, bear in mind that although you are paying yourself back, these repayments do not count as contributions. So no tax break for you, no reduction of your taxable income on these amounts, and most likely no employer match on the repayment. And sometimes the plan provider may not even let you make contributions to your 401k while you're repaying that loan. So you're very limited on how much you can borrow also. And you can see where the compounding and losing the interest for retirement can hinder the growth of that account. As for withdrawals, not all plan providers allow for loans, so you may have to go with an outright withdrawal. And if they allow for in-service withdrawals, you're likely to incur a 10% penalty on the amount you withdraw unless you meet stringent rules for exemption. Even then, you will still owe income tax on the amount of the withdrawal. Even if it's doable, tapping your retirement account for a house can be problematic no matter how you do it. You're diminishing your retirement savings, not only in terms of the immediate drop in the balance, but the potential for future growth. Think about all of those contributions, like I said, were on the loan, not being able to take advantage of those matches, leaving free money on the table. So I mentioned earlier that there are some alternatives to getting money for a down payment. There are also alternatives to tapping a 401k. So for example, you could tap your IRA if you're buying a first home. IRAs do have special provisions for first-time home buyers. Also, Roth IRAs allow withdrawals up to $10,000 of earnings tax-free if the money is used for first-time home purchases. But again, not ideal. These are dollars that were put into those funds for retirement, for the future. So you want to talk to your advisor, not only your financial advisor, but again, that tax advisor prior to making the decision to see how this could impact your plan down the road. So now let's talk about maintaining the home that you're purchasing or even your current home. And like I said earlier, that we partnered here today with Freedom Home Advantage, and we did it for many reasons. And I mentioned them at the beginning of the webinar. You know, they are reliable, they have experience, and they're experts in their fields. They have also give their clients peace of mind. That's what we want to do when we're building a plan for someone to help them meet their goal. And that's what makes this partnership with Freedom Home Advantage so awesome is that we're on the same wavelength. We have this relationship and we want to do what's in our best interest of our clients, and we want to give them peace of mind so that they can do the things that they want to do. Matt, how can Freedom Home Advantage help our homeowners?
Thanks, Beth. I really appreciate that. And many of the calls that we get from people is that they've let things pile up, you know, whether it's their own home to-do list or the maintenance on their homes or investment properties. Please don't let it get to that. You know, like a strong investment plan, those small investments over a period of time really add up. And in this case, they often prevent a lot of really large, costly repairs when you let them go. So that's why our team focuses on safety and cost efficiency items first, and you should too. You know, yes, it might be nice to do, you know, paint your daughter's room and make it look nice, but if you haven't bothered to check the roof to make sure that it doesn't need repaired, when the ceiling starts to collapse from water, that newly painted room really, you know, wasn't worth it. So here's a list of a few items that our team do. You can think of it as our own, you know, part of our internal checklists that we do when we visit the homes or the rental properties to make sure that the home's safe, comfortable, and cost efficient. So the first are around water. As you can imagine, water does a lot of damage to a house. And there are some things that pretty much anyone can do with minimal experience to actually identify these and prevent them before they become a larger issue. First, I can't tell you how many people don't bother to look in their attic or haven't been in their attic. Actually, if you go up into your attic, depending on how much is visible, you can actually look at the underside of the roof sheathing and you can see where water's starting to come in. You know, it's not like normally there's going to be this large hole and all of a sudden a lot of water comes through. You will actually see it over time. The water will get larger and larger and larger, and then it starts to drip through, and then it's going through your insulation, then the ceiling, and that actually usually takes a long period of time to do. And if you identify that and get someone out when it's starting, that's a major savings that you could have. Also, make sure to clean the gutters and the downspouts. Again, similarly, if those back up, it goes right down along your foundation. Another thing that will take some over time to be able to get visible on the inside or to see the damage, but once the damage is done, it's actually a very costly repair. Another trick that we do is after it's rained, you can actually just go outside and look around your gutters and your downspouts. You'll be able to see over time, if you have white gutters, for instance, even brown gutters, you'll be able to see the darker buildup. Or down where the downspout actually goes into the rain leader underground, you'll see around the area all of like your mulch, if it's in a mulch bed, will be removed, displaying that there's been water that's been gushing out of your downspout. It must be backed up further down the line. So you might not necessarily be repairing your roof or necessarily fixing that clogged downspout, but identifying it, which is what a lot of people can do from looking around, will prevent a lot of future damage and enable you to get the right people there to do it. Caulking. This is something that I must say is missed a lot. We will get a call and asking for our team to come in because the dining room ceiling it's sustained that water damage and it's starting to collapse. And we'll go right above that and see that it was actually the master showers there. And that it'll be very noticeable around the the bottom of the towel shower that there's no caulking in any of the corners on the sides or anything, and that water damage has actually gone through there. Again, not to minimize the fact that, but like a tube of caulking is like $5, and being able to do that to save hundreds to potentially thousands in case there was other damage done to furniture is well worth it, and something that you can notice. As well. Same thing comes to around your windows. When it comes to heating and cooling your house, which is a large expense, especially in the winter we just had here in Pittsburgh. Having those around the window caulked appropriately so the air is not coming in will definitely help on those bills. Safety, smoke alarms. So many people probably listen for the chirping and get annoyed by that. Hopefully, if you follow the rule of spring ahead. You changed your batteries already to avoid that. Even if you have hardwired smoke alarms, there is a backup battery in those. Now they do have smoke alarms now that have a 10-year battery on that you could use, but with those 10 years, you need to remember that they also expire. Smoke alarms do have an expiration date, and you will want to check that and actually get them replaced to make sure that they're fully functioning when you need them. Again, one of those things that you might not think about that often, but when you wakes you up at night chirping, or when you really need them, those are very vital to have. And I don't have it listed there, but I would highly recommend CO2 detectors and also a fire extinguisher. We check for those and actually advise all of our rental property owners to have both of those in their rental properties as well too. So a couple other costly things that you'd be able to help with around your house and prevent is appliances. Refrigerators, dryers, and even the bathroom vents. If you haven't pulled out your fridge lately or checked your dryer vent, which actually is a pretty big fire hazard if you don't clean that, they can get pretty disgusting. But with that dirt comes inefficiency, and that inefficiency, causes detriment to the appliance, and over time, the life of that appliance does not last as long. Similarly, the HVAC filter. We could be called in because the AC unit's not working. We'll check the filter and see the filter's clogged, and it actually freezes the AC unit, especially in the warm summers like we had last summer here in Pittsburgh. And then something that some people do not recognize is that if you have a humidifier, which adds humidity to your home in the winter, what actually happens is that you need to ensure that that's set appropriately and that filter is clean. So just like an HVAC filter, although it's usually 3 years-ish, depending on what humidifier you have, you need to ensure that is done appropriately. Last couple of reminders. This is a big one. I've heard several people that have gotten caught with this. Set a reminder, whether it's in your calendar, to winterize your hose bibs. When those freeze, they can cause a lot of damage, especially to a finished basement. And again, just having that routine, which is kind of what our team's about, but you having your own routine to make sure that you're doing these things will save you a lot of money over time. Last two things, couple quick tips. So a slow faucet drain, from my opinion, doesn't necessarily require a plumber to come in. You can check the trap first. It's actually typically a very easy disconnection. You can clean the trap, put it back in. It's a very simple process and will save you a lot of time and heartache when your sink is backing up. Or if it's actually a slow faucet, there's actually an aerator that you could normally screw off of the bottom of any faucet that you will notice that there's particle buildup on. You remove that particle buildup, put the aerator back, and all of a sudden you have pressure again in your faucet. so there's a couple of quick tips if you're going to do it on your own. Have the knowledge and the skill set to do it. But like I said at the end, and what I'm going to talk about here is make sure that if it's plumbing, electrical, or heights, and some of those items I talked about, if you're not experienced and you're not trained, you're not registered, I do suggest you go with a professional. So we're going to talk about how do you find that professional on the next couple of pages. So they do exist. I know that our industry gets a bad rep. I'll tell you, before I joined it, I might have been on that side as well too. So they do exist, and what I would say is at the moment, just please recognize, Beth mentioned the current sales market with homes and how it's much different than what we've ever seen here in Pittsburgh before. It's very similar on the home improvement side as well too. So do not be surprised if a good contractor is busy. That said, communication is key. Any good one will get back to you, that's for sure. You might not like to hear the delay it might take for them to get to your project, because most of the home building or home repair business is more transactional, which is very hard to forecast to actually. So you need to, you know, work with them and see how it works best. But often, at least for the good ones, it's worth the wait. So think about your project in advance the same way as you set your goals with your financial planning, and try and get ahead of that, and then you won't be in a rush. And if you do some of the preventative activities that I mentioned on the prior slide, then you hopefully won't be into that emergency situation where you know you need a roof today versus you have that window to be able to get to that. So ensure you invest the time up front to find a contractor and do your homework. So here's some of the things that, you know, a trustworthy contractor that we vet would have. They respond. Communication, again, is key. Response and direct response is critical. References, that if you have not used them before, that's the only way you're going to get a good feedback on how they do perform. It's very easy to sell or pitch a good process and service, but delivery is where it really matters. And so you want to definitely talk to some people who have worked with these individuals before in similar size and scope projects of what you're going to do. If you can't get references or you're not to that stage yet, reviews. Online today, most contracting groups should have, you know, some sort of an online presence. And so review their website, their Facebook, check the various avenues that you can get for reviews, the Better Business Bureau, and even just Google their company name. You know, you'd be surprised, and I've even done that with new hires, potential new hires, not new hires, when you Google their name, what you will find online. And so it's important, you know, to take that extra step and go through that. So now when you reach out to the reference on the next slide, is what I think I would recommend you focus on. So before you even reach out to the reference, like, go through what your specific expectations are for the contractor and like envision what the ultimate process would look like for you. Because some people, you know, some of my clients want to be very actively involved and they want to know every step of the way and they want to select the materials and be very hands-on. Other clients would prefer that we have a you know, high level, very detailed scope of the project, and they want to be hands-off, and they'd actually like me to make some of the selections as well too. Every client is unique, and some contractors can work with various clients, some cannot. And so what I would advise is have your vision and spell that out, not only to the contractor, but to the references, so that you can make sure when you're talking to the reference that if you want a very hands-on approach, that this contractor is good with that. Or if you're looking for hands-off, that they're also very good with that, okay? The other thing before you start to call a reference is think about a realistic budget in your mind. So that when you call, you make sure that you're asking for something similar. If you're going to get a whole, you know, kitchen remodel done, you're not calling and getting a reference from someone where the contractor built them a closet. Okay, you want to have a similar scope of work and a similar budget that this individual's worked on. So when you call the reference, the trick of the trade that I found out that you should do first is actually say, hey, how are you related to Joe Smith? And just start that way, and you will find out quickly, you know, if this reference that Joe Smith has provided you is his mother, his sister, his you know, best friend, as opposed to someone who may or may not have done work for them. It's just a very genuine way to ask out front, because if they are not related, they'll actually just say, I'm not related, Joe did X, Y, and Z for me. Okay, so once you're talking to them, ask what their experience was like with the contractor. Was he on time? And, you know, did he cancel the appointments, even from the get-go, when they're going out to do the reviews? And then the next slide, please. And then, you know, was he clean and doing the work? You know, you can say a clean van is often a representation of the way that they will perform their work on site. From working with several individuals within my own team, I can say that's an accurate statement. Was, you know, he or she, so were you happy with the process and the outcome of the project? Did you think the pricing was competitive and seemed reasonable? And important, just like your homework up front, ask them if they shopped around before deciding for the contractor. Find out, why did you pick this contractor? Was it the first guy in the list that you happened to go with? Their experience might have been good, but they didn't necessarily do their homework up front either. So make sure that you're getting that input. And yes, finding a contractor does take, you know, an investment of time. But as we see on this slide right here, like, consider how much time you already spend worrying about your ever-growing home to-do list, finding and chasing the contractors, stressing about the maintenance that needs done and how you're going to get it done, detailing with the tenant issues, or researching and buying the tools yourself. So as I'm kind of like encouraging you, make sure you do that investment up front, and then you will find that diamond in the rough that you're able to rely on and be that true partner that you're looking for. So now Beth's going to speak a little bit more on the next slide about owning a home and how it, you know, it does take an investment of time. So don't shortchange it, and begin thinking about it.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. You know, I keep saying this, but it is so important to make sure you put a plan in place. It's just something that you can take a look at, and it does relieve the stress. It will help you make informed decisions. And we all have stresses in life, but if we can plan for a few of them, think of the reward that comes with it. You know, freedom and time to do the things that you want to do instead of the things that you have to do. We don't want to spend our weekends if we're working all week, working on the house. So if you can plan for it, think of the reward that you'll get at the end. So if as we put here, do you have the time commitment? Do you have the expertise? And, you know, if the answer is no to either, then you must add in the cost of a professional. And now that all the cards on the table, you can be and make a informed decision. So instead of stressing, reap the rewards. You know, be sure to leave time for the things that you want to do. And I'm going to see if we have a few questions. I believe we have a few upcoming webinars in April that I'll talk about here, but I'm going to check the questions. I know we had a few sent in. Let me look at those. One of the questions I have is currently have a second home in Florida that is rented 3 months of the year. What expenses are tax deductible? Again, I would hate to say that I don't want to give you the answer, but I would definitely use a tax professional, an accountant, a CPA to answer that. With the 3 months, there may be a percentage, there may be certain things during the rental. I can do tax planning, but I don't want to give you advice on what is actually tax deductible. Another question we had is it worth buying down the interest rate for a 20-year mortgage? Okay, this is kind of interesting because if you think about where rates are currently, they are pretty low, but there are still times where you may want to get a lower interest rate. And so when you're applying for a home loan, sometimes you'll be given an opportunity to, you know, buy down your rate. And what that means is you're just required to pay a point, you know, the points at closing to get that lower rate. And these points are just really a prepaid interest that helps to reduce the interest rate. So what you need to know is how long it's going to take to really recoup the cost of paying those points. Will you still have the mortgage at the time of that? So finding out that break even, you know, if you're not planning on keeping that property for, you know, 3 to 5, you know, you're only planning to keep it 3 to 5 years, it may not make sense depending on what the cost of those points were. So you want to determine the break even. And you do that by dividing the monthly savings by the cost of the reduced rate. So, you know, buying down your interest rate, it can be great if you plan to sell in a year or two or refinance. It may not be worth it. So, for example, if you are saving, let's say $30 a month, and it costs you $2,000 for the points on a $200,000 home. It's 1 point, let's just say, so it costs you $2,000. That means it would take you about 67 months to $30 a month to break even. So will you be in the house for longer than 5.5 years? So it's not a bad thing, but right now with rates being pretty low, it may not be worth it to pay those extra points, but that's something that you could think about, and you want to figure out a break even. Then we had a question here about how about empowerment zone investing? That is definitely a little bit more complex, I would say, but there are these opportunity zones. Hopefully I'm answering the right question and on the same time, or the same question that was being asked here. And that was extended where you can use some capital gains as long as you use the capital gains from that you realized to be put into another opportunity zone property. And this way you don't have to realize those. So those can actually be pretty dynamic. There's a couple different things you can do depending on if you do have properties that you want to sell and you're going to buy other properties, 1031 exchanges. But these empowerment zone investing can be pretty powerful to reduce and avoid capital gains taxes. I don't know if that's the question that's being asked. It was just how about empowerment zone investing? It has been extended, I believe, until this year. If it's gone a little longer, I would have to look that up, but I believe it was only extended until 2021, and I'm not sure if it's through April or through the end of the year. So I can look at that and get back to the individual who asked that question. I can tell you that I don't know how long they extended that. Okay. I don't see any other questions. We do have some upcoming webinars in April, and we do add them on a regular basis. So please visit our website and see as those get added. But right now I wanted to say thank you so much for spending time with us today. We really hope that this was helpful to you. And as a reminder, don't forget to download those handouts that were on the menu page. And I know we have covered a lot of information, and I'm sure some of you may even have some additional questions. We posted our 800 number there on the slide if you want to get a hold of me. I'm actually going to ask Miranda if she can also type my direct dial. You can see my email there, but if you could put the direct dial in the chat. This way, if anyone does have questions, you can probably cut and paste that and give me a call, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have for your specific situation. I said it earlier, this has kind of been an interesting year in the housing market with low interest rates, and just want you to know that you're not alone, and there's lots of decisions to be made. So, purchasing and maintaining a home, it can be overwhelming, but let us know. We're here to help you, and we welcome you to reach out to either of us with your questions. I'm going to put Matt's information up here now to make sure that you have it if you have questions for him or about the services that Freedom Home Advantage gives to their clients. And again, download the handouts so that you have this information also. If you don't have a pen and paper, if you get those handouts, you will have his information from these handouts. And Matt, we really appreciate the relationship we have with you and your company. And I just want to thank you for all the information you gave us today.
For sure. And anyone has any further questions, feel free to reach out, and I appreciate it.
Great. And that concludes our webinar for today. Again, if there's any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We welcome those, and we will get right back to you. Thank you, and have a great day.